Alright, continuing to read Dallas Pimiento. This is book 4, last book in the overall novel. This is called Bronco Fury, and this first piece, page 43 in my edition, is called Guilt for Dessert. Brant Borden began growing a beard while being held in detention by the Morables, that secret clan of renegades making their home in the hills south of the Gomez complex. "He grows the beard because he is adopting our ways," said one Morable elder as he sat in council with his fellows. "He grows the beard to change his appearance," countered another elder. "He grows the beard because we have not the fancy shaving equipment of his people," the third made his own opinion clear. Meanwhile, Borden sat on his pallet in his hut, reading the few books this Morable village had: one John Gardner, two Anthony Trollops, and a discordant jumble of pulp thrillers, most of them implausible westerns. The beard had finally reached a length where Borden could pull it with his hand. He did so as he read. To the north, diplomats had arrived at the Gomez complex, intent on working with the charity arm of the complex to secure Borden's release. "If we continue to dawdle," one of the diplomatic team complained to a colleague, "we run the risk of having Borden turn native, as the expression goes." "Borden's a member of the aristocracy, a born snob. There's no chance of that," the other man demurred. "Borden is too valuable an agent not to be reacquired," the chief of the team said, entering both the room and discussion. "We must secure his release whether he likes it or not." As they sat talking in the comfortable quarters provided to them by the Gomez Complex Executive Board, they were closely observed by members of the complex's internal security division. "Each one has gained an average of 2 pounds since arriving," one of the security personnel reported to his supervisor. "How did you determine that?" the supervisor asked. "Using the Mandelson technique." "Ah, yes," the supervisor nodded, leaning back in his chair. "And of what value do you think this information is to me?" "Sir, we were always trained that all information is valuable," replied the man. The clear-cutting sweep of the second hand. Another fish bearing the sign of the police state leapt over the lip of the retaining pool, attempting, one suspects, to join his comrades in the great swamp beyond. Barry caught this one, however, in his massive hands. It wriggled to escape, but Barry held on to it as he stepped gingerly back to Mr. and Mrs. Clipto, standing on a rug spread out on the bank. "It bears the sign, Mr. Clipto," the hulking servant announced as he laid the fish in the silver ewer. "Indeed," Mr. Clipto, wearing the royal finery he had himself designed, raised an eyebrow and said, "Make it talk, Chuck." Mrs. Clipto, queen of probities by her husband's authority, was yet a simple girl from the duplexes behind Dulmart in her heart. "Yes, my dear." Mr. Clipto snapped his fingers at Dupree, the technician, who stepped forward with the device he had prepared. It fit like a lid over the ewer in which the fish lay. Hoses connected it to a microphone and earpiece assembly that Dupree now fitted over his head. "Ready, Mr. Clipto," the bearded man, a former hippie, said. "Ask it how it came to bear the sign of the Toast Party's totalitarian rule," Mr. Clipto ordered, putting a hand to his homemade crown to steady it. Dupree spoke into the microphone. He listened carefully, nodding as the words came back to him, translated into human speech by the device from the language of the fishes. He put a hand over the microphone. "He says he doesn't know what I'm talking about," he told Clipto. "He's a liar!" Mrs. Clipto put her hands on her hips and snapped. "Please, dear," Mr. Clipto said with a smile, "let me handle this." "As the fish," he turned to Dupree, "if anyone has recently marked his hide." Dupree duly conveyed his employer's words. "He says he's worked at the bowlery, whatever that is," Dupree reported. "What's that?" Clipto asked. "I don't know. It must be some fish word for which we don't have an adequate equivalent." Barry stepped forward. "Let us threaten to eat him," he suggested, brandishing a large knife. The relative properties of brass and bronze are listed. "I'm going to need that analysis by noon tomorrow." Major Strasser put his head into Brant Borden's office and reminded him. Analysis, Borden, now shorn of the beard that the public had come to associate him with, looked up from the latest issue of Honey Bun Aficionado and asked, with confusion evident in his voice, his eyes, the tilt of his head, "You haven't forgotten, have you, the in-depth analysis of Kiss's Asylum album?" Major Strasser took a step into the office. Borden could not see that he held a tiny rabbit, possibly an infant, in one hand. In depth? Borden's telltale features displayed more confusion. "Borden, you assured me that you'd have this done by the 21st. I forgot to ask for it then, but I'm going to need it tomorrow by noon." Strasser's rabbit sniffed the air. Borden had developed a taste for pestal during his months of captivity. Its odor filled his office. You'll have it, Borden reassured Strasser, waving him away. "All I've got left to do is come up with some kind of elegant, pithy summation of the album's qualities." "Sheer crap! There's your pithy summation," Strasser snapped. "Now please, get a move on." With a last glare of impatience at Borden, the Major took his leave. Borden stared at the open doorway for a couple of seconds. He returned to his reading with a sigh. What was happening to his memory, he thought, as he examined the diagram of a new Honeybun fryer? He hadn't thought once about the analysis since it had been assigned to him over 2 weeks earlier. It could be that he just didn't want to do it. After all, how much insight could he bring to bear on Paul Stanley's interjection of "fuck you" in the middle of Radar for Love? The nagging reality, however, was that it had completely slipped his mind. He hadn't even procrastinated about it. Now that he considered the whole thing, he knew he didn't want to do it, knew he wasn't going to do it. How could he get out of it? How could he take an already existent piece of analysis by someone else and rewrite it? But there was little likelihood that anyone had ever given Asylum any kind of deep critical thought. He finally decided just to make up a load of nonsense. Idiosyncratic fish learned to walk using fancy new gadgets. Dallas Pimiento always removed the entire peel from a banana before eating it. He stood eating his denuded fruit outside the Trumpo Cinema on the day of the premiere of Clusterfueled, a film about a giant robot invading a large city, waiting for his friend Lon Colloquia. He was staring at the entrance to the cinema's parking lot, looking for Colloquia's distinctive vehicle. A dome on wheels is the easiest way to describe it. Something caught his eye to the left. He turned and saw the dome car pulling alongside the curb on which he stood. Colloquia waved at him from the wheel as he turned into the rows of parked cars. "I came in the back way," Colloquia explained as he joined Pimiento on the curb. "I didn't know there was a back way." Pimiento offered his friend a banana, an offer that was declined as they headed to the so-called box office. "Yeah, through that little neighborhood back there. I'm not very familiar with this town." Pimiento took out his money and bought a ticket to the aforementioned Clusterfueled. Well off as he was, he did not offer to pay for Colloquia's. They took their seats, leaving one in between them in their manly way, and spoke idly of the upcoming movie. Colloquia withdrew a gorilla-shaped pill dispenser from his pocket and offered it to Pimiento. "Lapsodextrous?" Pimiento asked in a whisper. Colloquia nodded. Pimiento snapped the gorilla's head back twice to deposit 2 of the small lemon-yellow pills into his hand. Before he put them in his mouth, however, Pimiento grunted and said, "Better eat my bananas first." He unpeeled the banana as usual and threw the peel under the seat in front of him as far as he could. Colloquia had taken the dispenser back from Pimiento and gotten 2 pills for himself from it. He and Pimiento smiled at each other as they swallowed the powerful psychedelic. Soon the movie began. The giant robot, controlled by a crew of globular aliens on board a space-going vessel orbiting the Earth, seemed unstoppable until a handful of college students discovered that their sexual heat confused its sensors. About the time Brad, the psychology major, took off on his skateboard to rescue the large-breasted Cassidy from the robot, the lapsodex began to kick in. While Colloquia giggled, Pimiento analyzed the non-existent subtexts. Charon reduces his overhead. The next year saw a doubling in the number of converts. They wear the box with pride, Chief Foster Larry noted to the exalted founder T. Wilkes Brillstein. They stood under the portico of the recently completed Hall of Exaltation. A line of newly accepted acolytes passed before them, crossing from the dining room to the learning center, each one wearing a painted cardboard box over his head. A squarish hole was cut in the front of each box that the acolyte might see. "Yes, my friend," Brillstein responded, leaning heavily on his cane. He didn't really need the cane, but felt that it added to his image. According to the official literature put out by his religious organization, he was close to 200 years old. In actuality, he had just turned 40. But it has not yet become a habit with them. This morning I saw a couple of them outside the dormitory without their boxes on. "What did you do?" Larry asked. The exalted founder hefted his cane. "This is instructional as well as cosmetic," he said, smiling. Larry chuckled. Like the other members of the Exceptional Society, he and the exalted founder wore boxes on their heads. Their boxes, however, were made of leather stretched over a lattice work of goose feathers. Larry's laughter, coming from within the box, was muted accordingly. As the two men who had known each other since high school continued to talk, planning a recruitment drive at the nearby Dull Mart, a senior acolyte named Russell came running up to them, his green robe, denoting his position in the clerical section, flapping behind him. "Exalted Founder, Chief Foster," he said breathlessly, "a television crew is here. They're waiting in the visitors area and have requested to speak to both of you." "Calm yourself, Russell," Brillstein ordered in a fatherly voice. "Return to these people and tell them that they will have their interview. While I prepare myself, tell Tourmaster James to take them on the standard tour." As the acolyte rushed back, Brillstein turned to Larry. "Well, this is it," he said. "Time for that free publicity we've been waiting for. I hope these boxes look good on camera," Larry confessed to his secret worry. John plugs while Mary shrugs. "The way to determine your favorite color," the handbook began, "is to imagine yourself floating in an infinite empty space consisting of nothing but, aside from your own self, your favorite color. If this image generates an overwhelmingly positive feeling, then you have chosen correctly." Dallas Pimiento tried to imagine his using... God damn it. Dallas Pimiento tried to imagine using his avowed favorite color of orange. He saw himself floating in the infinite orange and immediately felt a warmth and contentment such as he had not felt in many weeks. He longed to be actually in such a space. "Truly orange is my favorite color," he thought as he closed the handbook and looked at the color. "Where'd you get that?" Lon Colloquia asked, coming into the room. He pointed at the handbook with his breadstick. "Found it in the parking lot of Dull Mart this morning," Pimiento answered. He gripped the book with satisfaction. It had a good feel to it. "I like it." "I'd be careful if I was you." Colloquia sat down at the small desk before the window that looked out over the garden below. "That's the handbook of the Exceptional Society." "Yes, I know," Pimiento replied. "It says so right here." He pointed to those very words below the cheaply reproduced image of the godhead of the organization, Ernie Kovacs's face annexed to a muscular-looking double bass surrounded by intelligent-looking fish. "They're a cult," Colloquia said as he turned his attention to the letter he was composing. He was begging his Uncle Orbis Legreg to let him come for a visit. "And once I'm there," he had explained to Pimiento earlier, "I'll make myself indispensable, and he'll will his secret fortune to me." "You're sure he has a secret fortune?" Pimiento had asked. "He has to. The way he lives, he's either a master criminal or a secret millionaire." Or both, Pimiento thought again as he dismissed Colloquia's concern for his intellectual freedom with a shake of his head. "By the way," Colloquia said without pausing in his efforts, "thanks for letting me stay the extra 2 weeks." "Thanks for the drugs," Pimiento returned. Bunks are assigned alphabetically. "Some people don't like mayonnaise," Lyndon Franker commented to Orbis Legreg, his friend and companion, on this rescue mission they'd undertaken. "Hard to fathom, isn't it?" Legreg responded. He was at the controls of the wheeled animal in which the two men were traveling to the southern border. "I like it," continued Franker. "I really can't eat a sandwich without it." "Another thing," continued Franker, "what is this stuff about mayonnaise being for white people, or wasps? Black people eat mayonnaise. And the Jews, I just don't get how mayonnaise is somehow the ultimate symbol of non-Jewishness." Franker pondered as they rode on for another 100 yards. "You know," he said, "it's a funny thing. I don't recall ever having met a black person." Legreg considered. "Nor do I." He glanced at Franker. Yet we know they exist because of all the jazz albums, Franker concluded. Right, LeGreg agreed. You know another funny thing? Franker leaned forward in his seat. I don't think I've ever met a Jewish person either. Now I know I've met a Jew, LeGreg was quick to respond. I can't think of any specific names, but I know I've met one. Well, if you can't think of anybody, then how are you so sure? Got to have, LeGreg insisted. All the people I've met, all the different places I've been. It's not like with a black, is it? Franker mused. I mean, with a black you know. Yeah. LeGreg began slowing down as they reached the first checkpoint on their way to the border. There would be 2 more of these before they actually crossed over. They waited while the soldiers on duty checked over their vehicle. One soldier at LeGreg's window examined their papers. He remarked on the wheeled animal. Don't see many of these anymore, he commented with an admiring smile. LeGreg agreed pleasantly. Soon they were on their way. A quarter of a mile later, Frankel turned to LeGreg and said, Let me ask you this. Have you ever met a Christian? Tiffany tries soy sauce on her baked potato. The actress who played Tom Cruise's mother in the quickly suppressed made-for-TV movie Secretive Paranoiac never had another significant role. Whether this was due to the retaliatory pressure put out by the Cruise organization, none can say for sure. Eventually resigning herself to her fate, the woman, Belle Eva Corson, married a local politician whom she encouraged to run for Congress. In an upset victory that rekindled her belief in the deity of her childhood, her husband was elected and she took her place in the Capitol. Now she was in attendance at a party slightly duller than those she had attended back in Hollywood. Her husband was huddled in a serious conversation with 2 men from one of the intelligence agencies discussing the possibility of remote brain control by ultra-low frequency waves, while she sat on one of the many couches in this artificial environment, nursing a sprained ankle and talking to a sweaty fat man about the power of Jesus to influence voters. A word subtly introduced into a sermon enthused the man, who wasn't exactly a preacher, more a religious advisor with a theological degree, such as referendum, melanin, or bestiality can work wonders in getting out the vote. Belle Eva saw what he meant. She said so. She even agreed with the man and his stated aims, but she was bored. She excused herself using her acting skills, claiming she needed to go to the bathroom. Upon standing up, however, she saw Tom Cruise enter the room. This was her chance to show him what she had become. Whether he remembered her or not, it was important that he be made aware of who she was. She limped closer to the throng of people around the celebrated star. Let me ask my wife, Congressman Corson told the men he was speaking with. At that moment, as he turned to look for his wife, a wave of excitement passed through the room. Tom Cruise is here, one of the congressman's interlocutors announced. Really? Corson asked, changing the object that he sought to see. I told you, the other man said. It was easy to summon him here with our techniques. I'm impressed, the congressman began to say as he caught sight of his wife putting her face right into the movie stars. The horse comes back riderless. Judging by the way the fellow carried the dead bird slung over his shoulder, I took him to be an experienced woodsman. Imagine my surprise then. Imagine it when he opened his mouth and in a resonant, broadcast-neutral voice spoke with authority about the proper installation of drapes. I turned to my companion and said, He's the one! He's the killer! Shh, she whispered. There is no killer. Just watch. I put my feet up on the coffee table, conveniently placed by the management for my comfort. The next person shown on the screen was even more idiosyncratic than the last. He was dressed conservatively, yet carried a puppet on his hand with a grotesquely carved head. He and the puppet engaged in playful banter for a few seconds before together delivering a message of brotherhood that I'm sure all of us took to heart. He's the killer, I said. There is no killer, my companion insisted. There's always a killer, I corrected her, and it's our job to find him. The appearance of the next person, however, made me begin to doubt my conception of this entertainment before me. It was a woman in a fish costume with a dead penguin held casually under one arm. She's no woodsman, I whispered. Shh, woodswoman, I corrected myself. The woman in the fish costume told us of her desire to kill, not only her enemies, but innocent people, strangers to herself. She said this with anger in her voice, but not the uncontrollable kind. It was the same kind of routine anger that anyone might feel, such as I had felt when I found out that popcorn was not available for sale at this entertainment. I mused aloud. She couldn't possibly be the killer. Was my companion right? Would there be no killer? For of course you couldn't have a killing without a killer. A joke occurred to me. I worked it out in my head before telling it, wanting to get it just right, and involved the killing that the management would make off ticket sales. But before I could tell it, I remembered that this entertainment had been free. Alright everyone, that was a lot of fun, and we've all had a good time. So I will try to replicate this good time very soon. See you later. Bye-bye.